My husband stopped touching me after our 10th anniversary. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just slowly, quietly, like love was leaving the room one small piece at a time. Before I tell you what happened the night I followed him downstairs at 2 a.m., before I explain why his younger brother looked at me and said, "You have no idea what he's been hiding from you," I need you to do something first. If you've ever felt someone slipping away while pretending everything was normal, if you've ever laid beside someone you loved and still felt completely alone, subscribe to this channel, because the quiet stories are always the ones that stay with people the longest. Our marriage didn't collapse all at once. That's the dangerous thing about distance. It grows silently. At first it was small things. Daniel stopped kissing me before work, stopped holding my hand during movies, stopped looking at me the way he used to. And every time I noticed, I convinced myself I was overthinking. 10 years together changes people, right? That's what I kept telling myself. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The night of our anniversary should have been special. I spent almost 2 hours getting ready. Black dress, soft makeup. The perfume he once said drove him crazy. I wanted us to feel like us again. For one night. When Daniel came home, he looked exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. Like someone carrying something too heavy for too long. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. But even that felt distant somehow. Like he was reading lines from memory instead of feeling them. Dinner was silent. Not awkward. Worse. Careful. Like two people trying not to touch a conversation they were both afraid of having. At one point I reached for his hand across the table, and for half a second, he hesitated. That hesitation broke something inside me. Because people don't realize this, but pain doesn't always come from rejection. Sometimes it comes from tiny pauses, tiny changes, tiny moments where love no longer feels automatic. When we got home that night, Daniel said he was tired and went upstairs early. No kiss, no good night, just distance. I stayed downstairs alone in the dark living room for almost an hour, staring at nothing, trying to understand when my marriage started feeling empty. Around midnight, his younger brother Ryan texted me unexpectedly. "You awake?" I stared at the message for a second before replying, "Yeah." 3 dots appeared instantly, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally he sent, "Can we talk tomorrow?" And suddenly, my stomach dropped, because something about those words felt wrong. Heavy, like the beginning of a truth I wasn't ready to hear. The next morning, Daniel barely spoke during breakfast. Coffee, keys, silence. He looked distracted the entire time, and every few seconds he checked his phone like he was waiting for something bad to happen. I kept watching him carefully while pretending not to. That's the strange thing about relationships. You can sense when someone is hiding something long before you understand what it is. Around noon, Ryan came over unexpectedly. The second he stepped inside the house, I noticed how tense he looked. Like he regretted coming here already. "Daniel home?" he asked quietly. "At work." Ryan nodded slowly. Then silence filled the room. Heavy silence. The kind that makes your chest tight before anything bad is even said. Finally, I looked at him carefully. "What's going on?" He rubbed his hands together nervously before answering. "You and Daniel okay?" That question instantly terrified me, because people only ask that when they already know the answer. I forced a smile. "We're fine." Ryan looked away immediately, and somehow, that hurt more than if he argued, because his silence told me he didn't believe me. Then finally he whispered, "He's been sleeping downstairs again, hasn't he?" I froze completely. Daniel never told anyone about the guest room. At least, I thought he didn't. "How do you know that?" I asked softly. Ryan sighed heavily. "Because apparently carrying secrets runs in their family. He talks to me sometimes," he admitted. And suddenly jealousy hit me harder than I expected. Not romantic jealousy, emotional jealousy, because somehow his brother knew more about my husband than I did. I looked down at my coffee trying to stay calm. "What does he say about me?" Ryan hesitated, long enough for fear to settle deep inside my chest. Then quietly he said, "He thinks you don't need him anymore." The words didn't even make sense at first. "What?" Ryan leaned back against the kitchen counter. "He says every time he walks into a room, it feels like you're somewhere else mentally." I opened my mouth immediately to defend myself. But no words came out, because deep down, I knew exactly what he meant. The nights I stayed glued to my phone, the conversations I rushed through, the way I stopped noticing small things about him, not because I stopped loving him, because life became routine, and routine is dangerous. It slowly turns people into background noise. Ryan looked at me carefully. "He still loves you," he whispered. "Honestly, I think he loves you more now than ever." That sentence confused me instantly. "Then why is he pulling away?" Ryan looked toward the hallway before answering. "Because he thinks he's failing you." And suddenly, everything inside me went quiet, because I realized something terrifying. I had spent months feeling abandoned, while my husband had spent those same months feeling inadequate. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what Ryan said. "He thinks he's failing you." The The sentence replayed in my head over and over again. Daniel came home around 9 p.m. carrying takeout containers and forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And for the first time in months, I really looked at him, not at the distance between us. At him. The exhaustion under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept pretending everything was okay. We ate dinner mostly in silence, but this time the silence felt different. Not empty. Fragile. Like something important was waiting underneath it. Around midnight, Daniel stood up quietly. "I'm gonna head downstairs," he said softly. And usually, I would have just nodded, pretended not to care, pretended this had become normal, but something inside me finally broke. "Why won't you sleep beside me anymore?" The words came out shakier than I expected. Daniel froze instantly, his back still facing me, and for several seconds, he said nothing. Then finally he whispered, "Because it hurts." My chest tightened painfully. "What hurts?" He laughed softly, but there was no happiness in it. Feeling like I'm disappearing in front of the person I love. That sentence shattered me, because suddenly every lonely feeling I carried, I realized he carried too. He turned around slowly, and for the first time in months, I saw tears in his eyes. Real tears. "I know you don't mean to," he whispered, "but every day it feels more and more like you stopped seeing me." I started crying immediately, because he was right. Not completely, but enough. Somewhere between work, stress, routine, phones, responsibilities. We stopped choosing each other. We stopped noticing each other. And relationships don't die from one giant moment. They die from tiny neglected moments that slowly pile up over time. "I miss you," I whispered. Daniel looked down at the floor like hearing those words physically hurt him. Then quietly he admitted something I'll never forget. "I started sleeping downstairs because lying next to you felt lonelier than sleeping alone. And honestly, nothing anyone has ever said to me hurt more than that." We talked until almost sunrise that night. Not perfectly, not dramatically, honestly. For the first time in almost a year, we stopped pretending everything was fine. Daniel told me how invisible he had started feeling, how every conversation between us became about schedules, bills, and responsibilities instead of us, how he kept waiting for me to notice he was struggling, and how eventually he stopped believing I would. Listening to him hurt. Because while I spent months convincing myself he was emotionally leaving me, he had actually been begging for connection in silence. And the worst part? I understood exactly how he felt, because I had been lonely too. Two people, same house, same bed, same pain, and neither of us knew how to say it out loud. Around 4 a.m. we ended up sitting on the living room floor together in complete silence. But this silence felt different, safe somehow. Daniel looked at me carefully before asking, "Do you think we waited too long?" That question scared me more than anything else that night, because sometimes relationships don't end when people stop loving each other. They end when people stop communicating before the damage becomes too deep. I grabbed his hand slowly, the same hand I used to hold without thinking years ago. "No," I whispered, and for the first time in months, he squeezed my hand back. Healing didn't happen overnight after that. There was no magical movie ending. Some days still felt awkward. Some conversations still hurt, but effort returned. And honestly, effort is what saves relationships. Not passion, not perfect compatibility. Effort. The decision to keep choosing someone even after life becomes heavy. So if you're listening to this while feeling distant from someone you love, say something before silence becomes permanent, before loneliness starts feeling normal, before the person beside you starts believing they're invisible. And if this story felt real to you, subscribe, because the quiet stories are always the hardest to forget.